I want to start our day off with a great speaker, Dan Pontefract, founder and CEO of the Pontefract Group, author of many books, including Work-Life-Bloom, Flat Army, and others. He's a long-term KM supporter and colleague. He hasn't spoken to us for 6 years, so we're glad to have him back in the KM community. I first met him when he was a Visioneer and Chief Learning Officer at TELUS, a Canadian telecom company with revenues of $14 billion and 50,000 global employees. He launched the Transformation Office there, the TELUS MBA, the TELUS Leadership Philosophy, and all award-winning initiatives that dramatically helped to increase the company's employee engagement. He travels in interesting circles and comes to us this week following his time at the Global Peter Drucker Forum in Vienna. Please welcome Dan Pontefract.
Isn't Jane the best? I mean, I know she's Canadian, but at the same time, I'm Canadian. It's so good. 6 years. Hi Stan, it's Sydney. It's so good to be back. The family of KMers and me, the crazy Canuck with the hats. I wear the hats because I'm very bald and I don't want to blind anybody in the front row in particular. So let's just get that out of the way. Okay, lots of stories about how we create value, not the money type, but the value of our hearts. We'll start with IKEA. Have you heard of IKEA? Yeah, it's weird, eh? Do you know IKEA's purpose statement? No. Well, this is what it's not. Instructions known, eventual assembly. It's not that. Also, it's not this, although I argue that perhaps it is. Denise and I have gone through 5 close divorces due to the stupid Allen key. Billy, I just don't understand Billy. Okay, anyway, it's to create a better everyday life for the many people. That's the purpose statement of IKEA. No mention of furniture or divorce rates at all, right? Now, when the pandemic hit, you remember that? That was fun. Gosh, that was fun, eh? And we were chasing around this thing, and we're still kind of chasing this thing around. But when the pandemic hit, this shop, this IKEA in British Columbia, it's a Canadian story, said, you know what, we should do some stuff for good. So they'd grab these blue bags, we all had the IKEA blue bags, and they'd start collecting stuff from the IKEA shop there in Richmond, British Columbia, and they'd give it to like people who were frontline team members, healthcare practitioners, nurses, grocery stores, so it'd be like, I guess, candles, flowers, some of the Swedish fish, I'm assuming. And then corporate got wind of what they're doing, and they called it Together with Kindness. And they said, we should do this right across the world. So whether in Europe or South America or Asia or here in America, it got everywhere. And you're like, wow, they listened to their people and they did some more good? That's amazing. They took money from 9 different governments around the world and then gave it back. They're like, yeah, we don't need it. We're good. Like, what company does that these days? No one anywhere. And of course, this was probably my favorite during the pandemic. They gave us instructions on how to stay home. A keyhole, and 100 toilet paper rolls. Okay. To create a better everyday life for the many people. That's value to me. That's how we shape value with ourselves, our people. Hopefully, if you're a leader, you're taking some clues with this. Let's go to New Zealand. The former Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, when the same pandemic hit, about a week in, she realized that, Easter was mid-April that year. And so we're talking March 27th, 28th, and she's like, whoa, there's a lot of kids, not the billy goats, but there's a lot of kids in New Zealand. There's a lot of billy goats too, actually, now that I think about it. That's another way to say sheep, right? Any Kiwis in the audience? I digress. Anywho, she has a full-on press conference for the kids of New Zealand because she realizes that we're on lockdown and these kids are probably thinking about Easter mid-April, and the tooth fairy. So she holds a press conference. She says, hey kids, don't you worry. I've actually had a conversation, track down the Easter bunny and the tooth fairy. We're good. We're gonna wear masks. I'm gonna give you some chocolate for Easter. We're gonna take your teeth and give you some coins. Don't you worry. Mama Bear, Prime Minister Ardern has got your back. Yeah. If we go to York, England, I guess we're going around the Commonwealth for a second here. So up in York is the National Railway Museum in England. And you're like, who cares? Well, you care if you're 6-year-old Sam Poynton, who lives there, who saw in the local newspaper that they were looking for a new director of the National Railway Museum. So ships ahoy, that's probably a mixed metaphor. Sam applies. Dear Mr. Tucker, chair of the board, application for director. I'm writing to apply to be the new director of the National Railway Museum. I'm 6, but I know I can do this job. I have an electric train track. I can control 2 trains at once, Mr. Tucker. Now, I don't know if there's any Brits in the audience. I was born in Blackburn. Don't hold that against me. No accent anymore. But yeah, we could be a bit stoic, stodgy even. You know, we could just put that letter into the bin. We're like, Sam, what an idiot. But no, they had a bit of a think, and they thought, well, couldn't we make him the director of fun? And they did. And Sam says, it's the best job in the world. I love it. It's good fun. So talk about value, right? We're just, okay. Now let's go, well, I guess a couple miles upstream. And so the US Open. Yes, it's another Canadian story, but she lost. Leylah Fernandez lost to an ex-Pac, Monica Radescu. So she loses in the final of the US Open, and just a couple years earlier, another Canadian won. So she felt pretty down. So she's a bit sobby, right? And tennis is the weirdest sport afterwards, because if you're in the US Open or Wimbledon, afterwards, someone shoves a microphone in your face and says, hey, loser, what's it like to lose? You're live on TV, Arthur Ashe Stadium, you got 35,000 people there. You're like, oh, I guess I should pretend I'm happy for the winner. So the court reporter walks away, and then Fernandez has an epiphany. And she said, can I have the microphone back? And this is literally the shot when she took the microphone back. And Fernandez says, I know on this day it was especially hard for New York and everyone around the US. I hope I can be as strong and resilient as New York has been the last 20 years. And on that day was the 20th anniversary of 9/11. So for that, the real question, in all seriousness, is who are you and how do you want to be known as a leader when you leave a room? This room, an email, another Slack message, whatever the case may be, how do you want to be known when you leave proverbially a room? And in that, I want to ask you really sincerely, like, do you value every voice? Do you value every kid or billy goat or sheep in New Zealand or any frontline team member across the world as those IKEA team members thought of? And so you have an old way of leading. I hope that it's evolved to whoever you are today. But there's something more I want to leave you with today. It's kind of like a new way. I want you to plant a few seeds, if you will, on 3 specific areas of contemplation. And then I will get on a plane and think about you as I'm trying to convince the next audience about how they want to change their ways. Because I've had the privilege here 53 times around the sun, and the last 30 working with y'all, about leadership, my observations. Stan, this isn't about you, but you're lazy. Like, a lot of you are just like, forget it. I'm not moving the twig, forget it. You can get very, very lazy. You're like, just screw it. I actually don't care. If you're from England, now we're getting serious. You're like, what? I don't even get this. Now, there's some evil leaders. Yes, you, sir, yeah. Where did the kids go? We don't know. Where's Jimmy? We saw him last week. He's not here at school anymore. We're concerned. And then there's idiots. Like, boss, he told me to put up a swing set. Yes, Jim, we did. Thank you very much. Actually, to paraphrase it all, this is how I see things happening. So you're a leader. You're the yellow truck. You can sort of hear the death march there, right? And then your employee has had an accident. You come to the rescue. And then you forget to put on the emergency brake, and you're just creating more issues for your team member. And then look at you. You're the leader there. You're like, what the hell? Like, what? What am I made of? What type of leadership am I made of? Okay, so really where y'all today are is that you have these certain beliefs. And the reality is that there is a heck of a lot of reality I need to introduce you to in sort of my remaining, 36 minutes or so. Let's start with Gallup. You've heard of Gallup, polling firm, does a lot of sort of HR business consulting, right? So interestingly, in around 2008, 2009, Gallup was recognizing that there was this like Fannie Mae, Fannie Mac thing, what do we call it? Like the fiscal cliff crisis where, the world was gonna end financially. So it was in the news a lot and Gallup was like, we should probably start testing people's emotions, their stress, their worry, their anger, and their sadness. And as you can see from the graph, it looked pretty flat until we had cardiac arrest with the pandemic, but it never really recovered to 2008. In fact, anger, overall, since 2008, is up 7% in our global populations. Stress is up 25% since 2008. It gets better, people. Worry is up 30, better. The least of the not very good is sadness, up 31%. It's like a Pixar movie about emotions. It's great, right? So in total, you've got all this happening. The reality. Your beliefs are wrong. It's not all good out there. So, yeah, I'm a totally non-Photoshop giraffe. Where's Spence? See, this was from my safari. Where's Spence? He's in here somewhere. There he is. See, it's like totally not Photoshop, right? Giraffes can do this. They can totally climb trees and bend their knees. No, it's a joke. You can't. But there's a reality, is that I know here in this room that right now some of you have just answered a text from someone in your room or group or team, and you're like, I don't know, I'm done with his jokes. Like, he's dumb. And that's fine. I get it. I'm Canadian. We have to live above America all the time, so we get it, right? It's okay. But this has been happening too, right? Now we've had to all figure out, well, we're gonna get replaced by these things? Like, this is in the news a lot. Your opening keynote yesterday mentioned that it's coming, but maybe we could remember that there's humanity and humaneness that should come first before we get taken over by the overlords. Yeah? But really, what's happened since '08 is this. Like, we are overloaded. And it's not lost on me here in a CAM audience, as there's a lot of data and information and stuff coming our way. Poor pooches, too. They're getting in on the act. There's a lot of texts they have to answer these days, right? God, I know, it's crazy. So back to tennis, this is what it feels like. Tons of balls in the air, tons of balls, right? And you're like, how do I get around to bouncing them all or hitting them back? And so for here, quote, CAM world, right? It's no different. What you're suffering from, the reality is that there's like a whole hell of a lot of things happening since 15 years ago. A lot of pieces of information. And so the elephant in the room, if we're going to mix a bunch of African Spence metaphors here, 80% of employees are having trouble falling asleep because they're thinking a lot about what's going on in their day. Almost half are working outside of, quote, normal working hours, or the office. Is there an office anymore? Office working hours. My favorite, perhaps. 70% of us are spending 30 minutes a day working from bed. Now, I have a Canadian theory about this. So, where is it? So, we bring this to bed, the $1,000 alarm clock, and we won't go to Target for the $35 actual alarm clock because there's an alarm clock built into that thing that was $1,000. And we're like, yeah, you know what? I'll answer those 600 emails I got between 7 p.m. and 11, and I'll do 30 minutes of work from bed. Yeah, that's not good. Half are having difficulty. Did you see that, Jane? There's like a squirrel. Yeah. I'm kidding. This is my office. I just got distracted. Everyone's like, is there actually varmint here in the Marriott? JW would be so angry. No, I got distracted. That's the point, right? It was a bit of a Canadian humor thing. 60% of us agree that we're always connected or available for work. Or 3/4 are doing other work in meetings. That's why I know 3 out of every 4 of you have already answered a meeting while you're in this meeting, right? Or an email. 1 1/3 are being interrupted while they're at work. Let's call this work. And then, This is a KM data piece. 18 and a half hours a week are being spent on like information. So texts, emails, Slack, obviously, Teams, you name it, DMs. So that's a lot of stuff. And not surprisingly, you know, where are we at? Reality check, people, burnout. Now, back in 2019, before the pandemic, the World Health Organization, being the WHO, started investigating this, but then they called it an occupational phenomenon. Not quite a disease, but an occupational phenomenon. Way to go, WHO people. I hope you're not in the room, because I'll make fun of you right in front of your face. That's terribly non-Canadian. But then this past summer, BCG did a global study and found that, yeah, indeed, they were kind of right. Half of us now are suffering from some form of burnout based on all the stuff I just showed you. So back to animals. Imagine if you have 2 hamsters in a hamster wheel. It doesn't end well, folks, let me guarantee you. This is what you look like. I don't know if this poor thing gets concussed, but it's just... Anyway, we're going to move on. So what are the results? What's happening with our reality check? Well, you had quiet quitting. We're still having that. And then the bosses are like, well, you've got quiet quitting. We've got quiet cutting. We so value you. Oh, yeah? Well, I'm going to rage apply. Oh, yes? Well, I'm a boss. I'm going to be paranoid about your lack of productivity. Thank you, Microsoft. Fantastic. Oh, yeah? Okay. Well, I'm going to have BMMs. It's different than BFFs. It's like I'm going to do bare minimum Mondays. They're like, what? What's that? I'm just going to mail it in, folks. Just going to mail it in. So then I've got my suggestions. I do wear hats pretty much everywhere. Again, I wasn't kidding. Okay, so what about Timeout Tuesdays, where every hour you have a 15-minute break? Yeah. Just 45-minute hours. Whimsical Wednesdays. We're not sure what happens on them, but they're whimsical. Whimsical. This is my favorite being Canadian, Thirsty Thursdays. So that's basically having scotch for the morning break, right? And then if you're from Jersey, forget about it Fridays, right? Forget about it. Okay, so in all seriousness, there is hope here. We've got, you know, the other side of the proverbial coin, which is it's been staring right in front of us. Like seriously. Some of you are like, what are they laughing at? I don't get it. It's probably the point. So yes, some tactics for you to consider before someone does get a cane and pull me off. Jane's like, we're paying for this? What's happening here? Okay, so I want to talk about bloom, collaborate, and care. We'll end with care. So this, I guess, second elephant, but the first one really, is bloom. Take a good look at all this great stock footage. And really what I want you to be thinking about is this question. What permits you and people just to be their best? Not engaged. That is just stupid. I don't care about levels of engagement in our organizations. I just want to know that people feel that they're at their best, whatever that best means, and that we're there to support them. I'll give you an example. So if UPS's boss found out that he had a tow cable and picked up, that seemed weird. We'll try that again. Picked up the tow cable and grabbed it, and there's a FedEx truck stuck in the snow. It just doesn't want to play. Trust me on this one. The tow cable is pulled and the FedEx truck is pulled out. Like that's nice, right? Yeah, that's valuing others. So the other way to look at this is this laptop seems to be not wanting to be fine. Do we make it okay to not be okay or not to be your best? And that's problematic for me as someone who's studying leaders and trying to help culture and leadership change, is that we think everyone should be engaged or totally awesome all the time. It's not possible. Let's start there. Let's just start there. Because signs like this exist. Is it you matter, don't give up, or is it you don't matter, give up? I mean, half of you are looking at it one way and half of you are looking at the other. So I did some research because it's a KM crowd. So I was like, okay, if there's not engagement, what do people want? So I went out to 10,000 people, 11 countries, including this one. And I said, look, what's the deal? How does this thing work? And effectively what I recognize is that we have personas. And the personas are based on the fact that we have work and life. And let's first of all make sure we're dissecting those. We bring our work into our lives into our work. They're not the same thing. So on the y-axis there, okay, folks, that's the one on the left, right? That's the y-axis, that's work. On the x-axis, that's the one at the bottom, that's life. And if we were just to say, look, if work's amazing and life is amazing, then we should be up there in the top right. But if we're in the bottom left, that doesn't mean that we want to set fire to the building. It doesn't mean we're chronically disengaged. It means we need some help. It means we need to renew. That's so much more positive when thinking about the value of people when we say, oh, are you in need of renewal? Yeah, I am. Yeah, we need to get a little bit of new seeds and maybe some water and some nutrients, some, sunlight, vitamin D. Yeah, that sounds more hopeful. If, work is kind of feeling a bit crappy for whatever reason, but life is pretty clear, is it more like I'm just stunted? It's like I'm not quite breaking through at work, but I feel pretty good for who I am as a human being. So I'm stunted. And then on the top left, if work is going swimmingly well, and however, I'm not sure about me, like those individual factors. I still got some work to do on me as a human being. Do you think maybe I'm budding? Because maybe my boss, my organization could help in the budding part to get to obviously the top right, which is to bloom. So what do these things mean? Well, if you're in renewal, you're kind of in need of refreshing your work and your life factors. You renew, you refresh. Bosses can help in this. If you're budding, you're succeeding at work, but you're going to need some further self-development. If you're stunted, you're stalled at work, yet you're thriving as an individual. It's like you're just wanting to bring that individuality to work. And of course, blooming is you're fully prospering. You're thriving. You're what I call flourishing. Flourishing. So I'm trying to get people up there to the top right as often as possible, but the reality check, based on everything I've so far told you with all these African animal metaphors, is that it's impossible. You're never going to be in the top right for the entirety of your career and life, nor will the people, if you have a chance to lead them, be either. So if we start there, a far better place to start than saying, hey, how come I only have 70% of my organization not engaged or trying to set fire to the building? That's the wrong Gallup equation. They've got it wrong. And I'm here to set the record straight. So my research, because I know you love research, 10,412 people, I think, 11 countries. Here's what I found. Look, 41% of us are blooming, and 59% aren't. Great. The goal isn't 100. This just gives you a level set that 4 out of every 10 people at that particular junction, I've done this assessment twice now over a 1-year period, basically the same result. Okay, so then we kind of look at males and females. Yeah, this isn't great, to be honest. Males are coming in at 50% blooming and females plummet to 32. Now that's something we should talk about. Now 50 isn't great either, but why is it plummet to 32 for females? Good question. And then on the leaders versus non-leaders, kind of like, oh, almost similar data, just a little bit worse. So this is what I call fundamental attribution error. Leaders saying it's awesome, and employees saying, come again? So my favorite beer these days is Merck Life Balance. If you find me in a pub, I'll be drinking this, sometimes Guinness. And the whole point of this is that work and life are puzzle pieces. In fact, not just puzzle pieces, but 2 ropes. And when the ropes are knotted, we might like to say that we're having complementary and contradictory forces of work and life. They can complement or they can contradict. We know this. This is why there's 4 personas and not 1. And so ultimately, very Churchillian perhaps, our lives shape our work, nevertheless our work shapes us. You don't check your life out at the office door, and you don't check your office or your work at the home door. So some tips for you as an individual. First, trust. What is it like with your boss, or what do you like with your team members when you're being a transparent leader and an advocate for the team member? It has to be consistent. It can't be just on Fridays or once a year when it's the holiday Christmas party or holiday party, right? No. How you trust your people has to be level, and when they're not in the room, you have to advocate for them so they know that you've got their back. Strategy. When a team member has no idea what's going on with the strategy of the team, the org, the unit, that it's on a PDF that gets sent out every January 12th. They're like, anyone remember the strategy? Oh yeah, that document, the PDF? Yeah, I remember that. Did anyone do anything about it? We don't know. It's just a one and done. That actually plays out to the work factors of being operational. Norms. So do you have team norms? Do you talk with your team member, or do you have personal norms? Do you have consistent processes in which to collaborate, communicate, not be at work, not be infringing on people's time? What are the pluses and minuses of not having norms? So I can tell you the minuses. So it's clarity, job responsibility, job design, the ways in which to do things. When you don't have norms, people are questioning their worth because they think that they have to be on all the time. Back to all those crazy, fun anecdotes that I shared with you. How about skills? You know, I don't understand as a recovering chief learning officer why we don't have rotations or gig economy thinking inside the organization so we can get people networking and learning and skilling up in other parts of the org. Like, let's not wait for AI. Let's just do it and help our people see that we believe in you. Let's skill up. The skillification of me, as I say. Meaning, can we have an alignment about who I am as a human being, my self-worth, and what I do at work? God, that'd feel good, wouldn't it? If we actually cared about people's sense of meaning and what they're bringing from life into work? Or do we know whether or not that they have a network? Is my network my net worth, or am I lonely? Which, by the way, up the street in Dr. Vivek Murthy's Chief Surgeon General of the American Special Unit Forces Office, I made that part up. But Dr. Murthy, as a Surgeon General, came out with a study, a 12-month longitudinal study here in the US, and found that, yes, indeed, loneliness is now like smoking 13 cigarettes a day. So what are we doing as leaders to help our people see that relationships matter? And we're doing something about it in and out of the office, so to say. So I truly believe we're all on a journey, and I present to you me. I think there's 6 different logos, starting on 1995. So it's not, that's bad math, right? That's 28 years. I'm terrible. 29 years. Wow. God. So 25 plus year. Can I do that? So even in the same organization, when I did the retrofit, I looked back and I like, oh yeah, that was awesome. And like, oh, SAP just bought us. Oh, I fell. And then I found a little bit of hope with SAP and then I left, kind of thing, right? So we all have this. All your team members have it if you're privileged to lead a team or a unit or an org. And it's okay. It's okay. So how we act as leaders values where people are at in the moment, trying to help them get to bloom, but knowing that they may fall as well. So that's one. Number 2 is collaborate. I'm Canadian, so I'm bringing in a canoe here, folks. So imagine a 10-person canoe. But imagine that like there was only 3 people that are paddling sort of positively. They're curious, they're open to change, they're collaborative. You got 5 people in the middle there, they're like, well, we've lost our oars, we don't know where they are. We're kind of semi-change people, we're kind of ambivalent, right? We're like sort of collaborative. And then you've got these folks, the anti-change saboteurs of being uncollaborative. Like, yeah, now the math people in the room are like, you know we are moving forward, right? Because there's 3 green and only 2 red and 5 yellows. Like, I get it. Kind of slow though, right? That's the point. So how far ultimately will your leadership go if you're kind of in this canoe metaphor and you're not thinking about the whole canoe? And so could we have a green canoe, please? That's basically what I'm going to get at. More green canoes. Because when Houston We Have a Problem happened, you saw a green canoe. You saw it. It was from everywhere. Astronauts came in from home and helped, right? You've had like janitors helping out. They could figure out where to find the duct tape and so on. Like they just all collaborated. And then you had this, the antithesis of collaboration. And 9 people died. 3 companies not working together. So how does collaboration work? Well, it's a good time for me to get a drink of water and for you to watch a commercial.
Here's a story about a man who dreamed of a better world, filled with glittering possibilities. dreams that make the world go round. Best dreams are not dreamed alone, but together.
I mean, it's a Scotch commercial, so you expect nothing less from me, I'm assuming, at this point. Okay, what to do? I've got two kind of collaboration tactics. The first, I've sort of alluded to it in a Bloom tactic, and that is norms. Specifically, though, collaboration team norms. Sit down with your team, if you haven't done so already, and sort of ask them, what's the way in which we are going to conduct our team business? What are the ways in which we're going to email or text or use Teams or whatever you got? How often are our meetings? Should they be 60 minutes or can we cut them down to 35? What's the frequency? What are the follow-ups? Can we use AI to summarize the notes? Where are those stored? You see what I'm doing? All of that is clarity. And when you have collaboration norm clarity, you have people who now feel like this. You ready? It's like the biggest Zen meditative sigh when they know exactly how, when, and why they're supposed to collaborate. And then another mnemonic for you is what I call dare to share. So how do you dare to share? Well, it's 3 stages. There's up with your team, there's down with you as a leader, and there's around your organization. So up. You have information, data, knowledge that your team needs. So what are you doing, when appropriate, to proactively share it and not reactively be asked for it? So how are you the conduit in your team? Because if they're always relying on you and you're not doing anything about it, then you're not a very good leader and you're creating consternation with the team, back to all of those different crazy things I talked about in the first 15 minutes. Down is that you know that you have to become a learn-it-all. So what do you have to do? You have to go out in the organization now. You have to say, Jane, I know that you did this sales presentation 2 weeks ago. Can I get the PowerPoint? Because that was pretty awesome, and I'd like to share that with my team. Some great data points. Thank you, Lady Jane. But you didn't wait for Lady Jane. You just had to go and get it. Nothing wrong with that. Hey, I got your back, Lady Jane. Next time, tell me if I can help you. Reciprocity is a good thing. And then around is you thinking now, hopefully, holistically with the organization. You're like, hey, Stan, I know we're in a different unit. You're like 3 units over, but I think you could use this because I heard you had this client and you know what? I think you could probably use this information. I'm just thinking about you. How cool is that? So up, down, around is a real easy mnemonic to get you and hopefully your team thinking about how to be collaborative. And then the last elephant is care. So what I thought I'd start first is sort of like over yonder. Several moons ago, several presidents ago, Sam Rayburn was the Speaker of the House. Sam is picked up by a driver, as lots of Speakers of the Houses are, to go to work. And his aide says, hey, did you hear what happened last night? And it's like 7 in the morning. And Rayburn's like, no. It's like late 60s. Well, apparently, there was a journalist in town, and that journalist lost their daughter to a car accident. And Rayburn's like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Can you find out where he lives? It was a he. Yes, I can. He's like, okay, well, let's go. Let's go to the house. So the driver drives them to this journalist's house, knocks on the door, right? Journalist answers the door, sees the Speaker of the House at the door, says, oh my gosh, sir. And no, I'm here to pay my condolences. I'm truly, truly sorry for your loss. And the journalist says, thank you, that just means a lot. And then Rayburn says, have you had breakfast yet? Morning coffee? The journalist's like, no, we've been grieving all night. This is terrible. Let me make you coffee. So he walks through the back of the house where the kitchen is. And then, as journalists do, you sort of have this epiphany. You're like, wait a second. A, the Speaker of the House is in my house. And B, isn't he supposed to be somewhere else right now? Because they kind of memorize the agendas. And so he says, sir, you're not supposed to be here right now. And the Speaker, without missing a beat, says, yeah, I know. I sent someone to tell the President that I will not be there at breakfast today because I have a friend in need. You can imagine they were not friends, a Speaker of the House and a journalist. Which is to say, to bloom and to collaborate, we need support. We need to care about the people we work with. Before AI took over, there was T.AI. This crew might remember this story, maybe 2015, 16. So Twitter.ai, when Twitter was normal, the team had spent like 6 or 7 months on this artificial intelligent chatbot to be released to Twitter. And it lasted a day. Why? Well, in no particular order, and only 3 of the, 6,600 issues, Tay became a misogynist, Tay became a Hitler and Himmler and Nazi supporter, denied the Holocaust, was just a PR nightmare for Microsoft. And so an individual writes to the team of 60, says, keep pushing and know that I'm with you. The key is to keep learning and improving. They obviously pulled down Twitter, or Tay that day, from Twitter. Then went on MSNBC that night and said, it's so critical for leaders not to freak people out, but to give them air, cover, to solve the real problem. If people are doing things out of fear, it's hard to, or impossible, to actually drive any innovation. And inevitably, Captain Empathy himself, it was Satya Nadella, the CEO, looking out for his team. When I had a chance to interview him, he said to me, Dan, ideas excite me, but empathy grounds and centers me. And so, folks, without ado, it's empathy that is how we care. But we've got empathy wrong. We think empathy is just a word. In fact, there are 3 types of empathy, and I've got a math equation you'll never forget for you to use going forward. Cognitive, emotional, and sympathetic empathy are what makes up empathy. So what does all that mean? Well, social scientists tell us that cognitive empathy is how we intellectualize what people are thinking. And so the best way to use that is like, how do you use your head to get inside of people's heads? What are they thinking? Could be socioeconomic, could be identity, could be geography, could be whatever. Could be unit, just what are they thinking? What's their background and how are they thinking about this situation? Then you get into what you might remember, which is emotional empathy, which is now, they're somewhere between pain and joy or in between the two, and it's the emotional side, and that, of course, is heart. What are they feeling in this situation? And then you get into sympathy. Sympathy is now we've had enough observation between head and heart. Now we should be able to act. We're motivated to do something about this. So, head plus heart equals hand, essentially, right? Head, heart, hands. Head, heart, hands. Leave with that, and that's the one thing that's your takeaway. Head, heart, hands, right, Bonnie? Head, heart, hands. So, whatever football club you support, or you don't even know what football is, it's the real way to say soccer. This heathen says soccer in North America. Nonetheless, I am a Man United supporter, and if you're Liverpool, leave if you support Liverpool. But this is one of their strikers. His name is Marcus Rashford. Grew up poor, single mom, sibling, lived actually outside of Manchester growing up. Poor as anything. Recalled during the pandemic that kids who were poor like him during the day used to go to school to eat. They had no breakfast or lunch at home. They don't have enough money for dinners, essentially. So Mr. Rashford starts railing on Boris Johnson and other people in government, say, we've got to do something about the kids. We've got to open up kiosks. We've got to do anything. He's using his celebrity to help kids eat whilst they are cooped up in a lockdown event. And finally, the government acquiesces and said, fine, I guess we'll save the kids. And then Marcus starts, volunteering his time across the country. And his own money, by the way, to help beef up some of the missing beef, I suppose. But that's not actually the story. That is head, heart, hands. But when we head, heart, hands ourselves as leaders, we create force for good in others. Marcus gets a letter from a 7-year-old kid named Zach. Dear Marcus, I love all the work you're doing, some amazing things to help families who are in need. You make me want to help others and be a better person. Now, the kid goes on to say, will you join Spurs, which is a rival club, so I loathe the child. But you get the idea here, right? We can spark empathy. So my empathy/care tips, not surprisingly, can you remember this equation? Head, heart, hands, head, heart, hands, head, heart, hands. Everyone, head, heart, hands, head, heart, hands. Can we first seek to understand where team members are coming from before we rip them a new one in a text or an email or a conversation? Let's just be stop, drop, and roll before the fire. Don't just say you care. It's actually a verb. That means you do something about it. It's not a noun, it's a verb. So action your care. And so, for example, when you say, hey, how you doing? And then you walk right past, that's not actually a verb. You've now turned that into an adjective. You want to verb care. So you just stop. You're like, okay, have I checked in with the team, all of them? Do they know that I care? And have I actually sat down and said, no, tell me a bit now, 5 minutes, how are you actually doing? Is there anything I can do to support and help you? That is leadership. And please don't play favorites. Not a good strategy. So, Cam World, final thoughts before we hear from your next speaker today. I'm a Rubik's Cube fan, used to be able to do it in 29 seconds back in the day, and I didn't take the stickers off. I actually learned how to do it. But I realized when I'm thinking about the Rubik's Cube is that there's 3 dimensions in essence, right? There's your org that you have to think about, but then there's the team that you might be supporting or on, and then there's you. And of all the things that we talked about today, that actually makes sense now. How are we thinking about you and your team to bloom in those 4 quadrants, the 4 personas, the canoe metaphor, the collaboration activities of the norms and dare to share, up, down, and around. And then here on the last one with care, ultimately, head, heart, hands is something I want to leave you with. So one last story, and then I'm taken off by a cane by some imaginary, well, probably Lady Jane. She's got a cane, literally, okay. So I'm in New Orleans, and I'd never been, and I'm walking down in the, what's that called? French Quarter, thank you, Stan. And I pass by this, the House of Blues. I'm thinking to myself, that's Dan Aykroyd's joint. He's Canadian, I should go in. I'm Canadian, right? I think there's a special pass. And these guys are playing.